Yardley Love was born on July 17, 1987 in Baltimore, Maryland, to a well-to-do family. Her parents, John and Sharon Love, provided a comfortable upbringing for Yardley and her older sister Lexi in the neighboring small town of Caucusville. From a young age, the two sisters shared an unbreakable bond, almost like best friends. Yardley excelled at sports, especially lacrosse, which she played avidly with her father's encouragement. Tragically, when Yardley was just 16, her father, an investor by trade, passed away from cancer in 2003. Devastated but determined to make him proud, the teen threw herself into lacrosse with renewed dedication. By all accounts, Yardley blossomed into an exceptionally kind, intelligent, beautiful, and cheerful young woman who radiated positivity. After graduating high school, she enrolled at the University of Virginia to study political science and Spanish. Eager to immerse herself in campus life, Yardley moved to Charlottesville and rented an apartment with a roommate. In a rare achievement for a first-year student, Yardley secured a spot on the university's prestigious lacrosse team, quickly rising to stardom and even donning the coveted number 1 jersey. Nicknamed the Angel by her teammates, the driven athlete managed to maintain a perfect GPA while still finding time to tutor struggling classmates. In 2008, Yardley's path crossed with George Hughley, a fellow UVA student from a wealthy family with hotels in Palm Beach and a large yacht. Handsome, smart, and athletic, George studied anthropology and also played on the lacrosse team. The two seemed to be a perfect match. Both hailed from affluent backgrounds, attended private schools, and now shared a university and a sport. Sparks flew immediately, and the attractive couple soon became the talk of the town. George appeared utterly besotted with Yardley's beauty, captivating blue eyes and angelic demeanor. However, beneath the picture-perfect facade, trouble was brewing. Unbeknownst to Yardley, George had been battling demons from a young age. Born on September 17, 1987 in Washington, D.C., George's parents divorced when he was just 8 years old, leaving him to be raised by his mother in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Standing tall with a sturdy build, George excelled at football and lacrosse at his all-boys high school. His prowess as a linebacker helped clinch the school championship. But despite his athletic accomplishments, George began drinking heavily as a teenager. Friends described him as a spoiled, erratic rich kid who threw wild alcohol-fueled parties at his family's vacation home, cruised around on his parents' yacht, and drove flashy cars. In 2007, he faced charges for underage alcohol possession. The following year, George was arrested for public intoxication and resisting arrest, requiring police to subdue him with a taser. He received a 6-month suspended sentence, 50 hours of community service, and was ordered to undergo alcohol counseling. As May 2010 approached, Yardley counted down the days until graduation and the end of the lacrosse season with eager anticipation. Sadly, she would not live to see either milestone. In the early hours of May 3rd, Yardley's roommate returned home from a party to find her friend unconscious in their apartment. Panicked, she called 911. Police arrived at 2:15 a.m. to a horrific scene. 22-year-old Yardley Love lay lifeless, face down on her pillow in a pool of blood, her head bashed in, her body covered in fresh bruises and scratches. Her face was swollen and disfigured from the beating. This was clearly no accident, it was murder. Evidence of a violent struggle was apparent. The bedroom door had been kicked in, a fist-sized hole punched through the middle. Yardley's laptop was missing. The coroner determined blunt force trauma to the head as the cause of death, a slow, agonizing way to die. Yardley's death was officially ruled a homicide and a criminal investigation commenced. As detectives interviewed Yardley's inner circle, one name kept coming up: George Hughley. Friends revealed that just weeks before her murder, an enraged George had attacked Yardley, strangling her until 3 male bystanders managed to pry him off. Yardley had ended the relationship soon after, fed up with George's erratic behavior and, according to her friends, furious after catching him with other girls. Investigators honed in on George, heading to his nearby apartment to question him. Detectives immediately noticed fresh bruises and scratch marks on his hands. They summoned him to the police station for an interrogation, to which he agreed. George's version of events that night puzzled detectives. He claimed to have spent the day golfing with his father before heading to a family dinner. Arriving home, he drank a beer but decided it wasn't enough, so he headed to a bar to get thoroughly drunk. Emboldened by liquid courage, George decided to confront Yardley about their relationship after allegedly receiving an upsetting message from her around 11 p.m. Though broken up for a month, the two still crossed paths regularly at lacrosse practice and around campus. George was desperate not to lose her, knowing they'd likely go their separate ways after graduation. Yardley to New York for a job, George to San Francisco. Consumed by jealousy after seeing Yardley flirting with another guy post-breakup, George admitted to attacking and beating the man. Now drunk and enraged, he showed up unannounced at Yardley's door, demanding to speak with her. A startled Yardley, who had been asleep, refused to let him in and asked him to leave, having already decided not to get back together with him. In a fit of drunken rage, George kicked down her door and forced his way into her room. He cornered a terrified Yardley, screaming at her to hear him out. According to George, a hysterical Yardley lunged at him, shoving him away. He retaliated by attacking her as she cried out for help, but her roommate wasn't home and no one came to her aid. George claimed he shoved Yardley, causing her to hit her head on the wall and collapse to the ground, her nose bleeding. He said he then helped her to her feet, pushed her down on the bed, and left, insisting she was still alive when he exited and he had no idea what happened to her after that. George also admitted to taking Yardley's laptop, claiming he planned to return with it later so they could talk things out properly. He denied hitting Yardley in the face, unaware at the time that her facial injuries had already been cataloged by the coroner. According to George, any visible injuries on his own body and Yardley's were from lacrosse. Only at the end of the interrogation was he informed that Yardley was in fact dead. Appearing shocked, George professed his disbelief, arguing he couldn't have done anything severe enough to cause her death. It remains unclear if he genuinely didn't realize Yardley had died from his attack, or if his extremely inebriated state caused him to underestimate the force of his blows. Upon his arrest, George vehemently denied murdering his ex-girlfriend. Investigation revealed George had begun drinking first thing that morning, showing up to the family dinner visibly intoxicated. At the restaurant, he smashed a wine bottle and a glass. His father begged him to stop drinking, but he refused to listen. No evidence was found of the alleged provocative messages Yardley had sent George that evening. Detectives also uncovered that for some inexplicable reason, George had chucked Yardley's laptop, which he took from her apartment, into a dumpster. Investigators were convinced the computer contained something incriminating that George wanted to hide. After recovering the discarded laptop, police pored over its contents but found no email evidence of George threatening to kill Yardley. However, detectives learned that in the days leading up to her death, George and Yardley had been spotted arguing on several occasions, with George aggressively pursuing her. Friends disclosed that George was obsessed with Yardley, constantly calling her, bombarding her with messages, refusing to leave her alone after their 2-year relationship imploded. He was hell-bent on winning her back at any cost. Despite these troubling incidents and her mother's pleas to take out a restraining order, Yardley declined to press charges or take action against George. She reasoned that, with only a short time left until graduation, she'd soon be free of him and their toxic entanglement. Furthermore, Yardley had already secured a job in New York, far from George and their tumultuous history. On April 11, 2011, George Hughley was indicted on charges of first-degree murder, later amended to include theft and breaking and entering. In court, George maintained he had little memory of that fateful night, having drunk himself into oblivion. He stuck by the same story he'd told detectives during questioning. Numerous witnesses testified about George's issues with alcohol and anger management, recounting how he'd repeatedly attack not just Yardley, but his own friends and any men he perceived as romantic rivals. Unable to control his emotions or his drinking, George was a ticking time bomb. The defense argued that Yardley's death was a tragic accident, not premeditated murder. A highly intoxicated George, they claimed, lacked the cognizance and self-control to fully comprehend his actions. He may have attacked Yardley, but never intended to kill her. In a drunken stupor, he'd left her alive on the bed. She most likely suffocated in her pillow afterwards. Prosecutors painted a different picture: George as a spoiled, entitled brat who refused to take no for an answer, especially from a woman. When Yardley rejected him that night, an enraged George kicked down her door, viciously beat her, and left her to die, stealing her laptop to hide the electronic evidence of his murderous threats. Forensic analysis revealed Yardley had George's skin under her fingernails, while his nails contained traces of her DNA, indicating a violent struggle had taken place. George's own housekeeper testified that when he returned home that night, he had a vacant, traumatized look in his eyes. In a final bid for sympathy, George tearfully apologized to Yardley's mother and sister, expressing his deep remorse that such a horrible tragedy had occurred, something he'd regret for the rest of his life. After deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict guilty of second-degree murder. They found George's shocked reaction upon learning of Yardley's death to be credible, believing that he'd indeed killed her in a blind, drunken rage without premeditation or intent. On August 30, 2012, 25-year-old George Hughley V. was sentenced to 23 years in prison for the second-degree murder of Yardley Love. He has filed multiple unsuccessful appeals to overturn his conviction. As it stands, his anticipated release date is in 2030. The only person still supporting George is his mother, who has argued that due to the accidental nature of Yardley's death, a lighter charge and sentence would have been more appropriate. On September 29, 2018, 2,000 people gathered at the Baltimore Harbor for the dedication of the One Love statue, depicting Yardley in her lacrosse uniform. The bronze statue was commissioned by the One Love Foundation, started by the Love family in the wake of Yardley's death to educate young people about the warning signs of unhealthy relationships. On May 1, 2022, a judge ordered George Hughley to pay Yardley's family $15 million in a wrongful death civil lawsuit. Yardley's mother Sharon and sister Lexi were each awarded $7.5 million in compensatory damages. Yardley Love's story serves as a tragic cautionary tale about the perils of domestic violence and the importance of taking early action to extricate oneself from dangerous situations, no matter how complicated the circumstances may seem. Her death sent shockwaves through the UVA campus and beyond, sparking a national dialogue about dating violence and the critical need for better education and resources to protect victims. Though her time on Earth was cut far too short, Yardley's luminous spirit, kind heart, and passion for helping others left an indelible mark on all who knew her. Her legacy lives on through the work of the One Love Foundation, which has taught millions of young adults across the country how to love better and build healthy relationships free from abuse. As her cousin Sharon Robinson said, "Every day we try to find beauty in the pain and have something good come out of the horrible thing that happened." Yardley deserves nothing less. Though her life was tragically cut short, Yardley's luminous spirit continues to shine through the One Love Foundation, established by her family to honor her memory. The organization is dedicated to educating young people about the warning signs of unhealthy and abusive relationships, and has already reached millions of students across the country. In 2020, a statue was erected at U.S. Lacrosse headquarters in memory of Yardley, the accomplished athlete whose promising future was stolen. The sculpture depicts Yardley in her lacrosse uniform, a fitting tribute to the sport she loved and excelled at. On May 1, 2022, Yardley's family won a major victory in their civil lawsuit against George Hughley. The judge ordered him to pay $15 million in damages to Yardley's loved ones, $7.5 million each to her mother and sister. No amount of money can ever compensate for the immeasurable loss of a beloved daughter and sister. However, the judgment sends a powerful message that perpetrators of domestic violence will be held accountable for their actions, even if the criminal justice system falls short. Yardley Love's story is a heartbreaking reminder of the devastating toll of intimate partner violence. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by a partner in the United States. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence, sexual violence, and/or stalking. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, know that you are not alone. There is help available. In the U.S., you can reach the National Domestic Violence Hotline 24/7 at 1-800-799-7233 or visit www.ndomv.org. thehotline.org for resources and support. Don't wait until it's too late. Speak out and seek help to break the cycle of abuse. You deserve to be safe, respected, and loved. As Sharon Love poignantly stated, one of the things I struggled with after Yardley's death was, how could this have happened to someone like Yardley, so full of love and life and promise, a shining star to all who knew her? But I've learned that relationship violence doesn't discriminate. It can happen to anyone, and that's why education is so important. Yardley's death, while senseless and infinitely tragic, was not in vain. Her story ignited a global movement and has undoubtedly saved countless lives by shining a light on the red flags of toxic relationships. Yardley's legacy is one of hope, love, and the unwavering belief that we can and must do better to protect victims and prevent future tragedies. As her cousin Sharon Robinson beautifully expressed, every day we try to find beauty in the pain and have something good come out of the horrible thing that happened. Yardley deserves nothing less than to have her light live on by making the world a little bit better and a little bit safer. We will continue to say her name and share her story, because Yardley matters, and she always will. Thank you for taking the time to read about Yardley Love's life and the important lessons we can glean from her story. If you'd like to learn more about dating violence prevention or get involved with the One Love Foundation's critical work, please visit joinonelove.org. Remember, love shouldn't hurt. Together, we can end relationship abuse and create a safer, more loving world for all.